I have the opportunity to deal with more reality, deal with each other with a little more reality. Today, God also asks us a glass of water, establishes with us a friendship relationship to help us find a way this afternoon that we have left at noon. He helps us look this morning that was not very happy. I always say that we can suffer from two spiritual vanities, two types. One is the one that makes us feel much better than others, and the other is the one that makes us feel much worse than others. Because sometimes we are arrogant with our poverty. Interesting this, isn't it? You may have found a lot of arrogant people with their greatness. People who are arrogant because they feel great, feel winners, feel famous. But it is also dangerous for us to find, and we do not always know how to identify that it is. Those people who are arrogant because they feel too small, because they feel too miserable. It is in the heart of a person as soon as Jesus needs to enter. I remember as if it were today. I wasn't even a priest yet. My opportunity to imagine the scene, the Samaritan woman receiving Jesus there, on the edge of that well, in that reality of so much stripping. One thing that always touched me in this gospel was precisely the simplicity that the Samaritan had to allow, because it must have a soul stripping. The Samaritan, being a woman excluded from society, because she had a life of mistakes until that moment. It is possible that she was experiencing through her life a little of this second spiritual vanity. To feel worse than others. The life that went wrong. For all that she had done that caused a very painful burden of being taken that afternoon. In fact, the gospel says it was in the middle of the day that Jesus had this encounter with the Samaritan. The gospel speaks like this: therefore came to a city of Samaria named Sychar, near the property that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. And there was a source of Jacob. Jesus, tired of the trip, sat next to the source. It was around noon. A woman from Samaria came to seek water. And Jesus said to her, "Give me to drink." The Samaritan is surprised by a man who asks for a favor. Thus began that meeting. Jesus does not make a speech to her. Jesus does not use the religious authority he had, because he was a deep knowledge of Scripture. He asks for a favor, and asks for a favor to an unusual human being. The Jew could never speak to the Samaritan. The religious convictions of Jesus' time were like this. They were strict. They naturally planted this conviction in the heart that I had, being a Jewish, the right to despise the other who was in one class I considered, that my religious context considered unfavorable. It was another race. It was unclean. That woman was an impure woman. His disciples had gone to the city to buy something to eat. And the Samaritan said to Jesus, "How is you, being a Jew, asking me to drink to me that I am a Samaritan woman?" In fact, Jews do not relate to the Samaritans. And Jesus answered, "If he knew the gift of God and who he says to you, 'Give me to drink,' you would ask you, and he would give you alive water." The woman said, "Sir, you don't have a bucket and the well is deep. Where do you have this living water? Are you bigger than our father Jacob, who gave us this well, whose himself drank as well as his children and his animals?" Jesus answered her, "All who drinks from this water will be thirsty again. But those who drink from the water that I will have will never be thirsty, because the water that I will give will become a source of water gushing into eternal life." The woman then said to Jesus, "Lord, give me this water so that I no longer thirst, nor have to come here to take water, a water that quenched other dimensions of life." That not only this physical need, we having water in our body, moisturizing our body so that it can function well, is interesting, because it is as if we could establish this transition. In the program last week, we spoke of transition, that liberation that the Hebrew people needed to make Egypt. Leave Egypt to reach the promised land, as if we could share an old and new time there. In this woman's life was the same thing. Jesus was pulling this woman from a context of ancient things, realities that no longer fed, and proposing to her new water. Jesus asks her a favor and begins with that woman a therapeutic process that goes out of her all the roots that the error had left by the power of the word, my people. Look how fascinating this is. The first gesture that Jesus performs toward transforming that woman's life was asking her a glass of water. Do you want something more ordinary than that? Do you want something more commonplace? The friendship that was being born there from a request. Give me a glass of water. I'm thirsty now. But what Jesus really intended with that request was to enter the heart of that woman. He told you, "We'll call your husband and come back here." "I have no husband," the wife answered. To what Jesus replied, "You said well that you have no husband. In fact, you had 5 husbands, and what you have now is not your husband. And in this you spoke the truth." The woman said to her, "Lord, I see that you are a prophet. Our parents have loved about this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place that should be loved." Jesus answered him, "Woman, believe me, comes the time when in this mountain, not even in Jerusalem, you will worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We love what we know, for salvation comes from the Jews. But the time comes, and it is now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. These are the worshipers that the Father seeks." Asking that woman to water, Jesus begins with her a transition, a transposition of a sea that was extremely violent in that woman's life. Naturally, she tells him that she really had no husband. All who had gone through her life had already become an illusion. Not loved, they were not. It's interesting because she had already had 5, which she had today wasn't hers. Means she had a role, a case. Should be a lover of someone. He wanted to open a space of trust in her heart. She needed to feel that he wasn't talking to her for any reason. First, a deep respect for her. It has already started breaking that rule there. He had the right, being Jewish, of not directing the word to her. He preferred to break that rule. Asks for water, and begins with her a speech that was causing that woman to bring all over the past and correct him in the light of someone who began to love her, who saw her with mercy, who, as she asked a glass of water for her, she was offering living water that had the power to profoundly transform her heart. God is spirit, and what worships him must worship him in spirit and truth. The woman said, "I know that the Messiah will come, that is, the Christ. And when he comes to make us know all things." Jesus told you, "I am talking to you." Jesus enters this woman's life from this mystical belonging that makes all that had been a disastrous past to be reinterpreted in the light of a love, a new marriage, a communion that only God can make. And this meeting also happens in the middle of the day, as if the evangelist wanted to show us that until then, everything that had been disastrous until the noon with the arrival of Christ, with this water life that he offers this woman, becomes a division, the Old Testament and the New. The old man giving way to the novelty. I always like to say that we have not reached almost nothing of what we can in ourselves. We are still in the porch of the house. If we can say that we are a house, we are only in the porch. We have not yet entered the main room, the bedrooms, the kitchen, the underground. Why? Because we often stand still in what it didn't work out. Because we often insist on putting our eyes on the realities of our life that were not favorable, that were not happy. Just as this woman also had a spoiled past. But suddenly at that moment, in that noon, in that division of the day with the afternoon, a favor is asked, and from that glass of water, a great transformation happens in its history. All of this is a step of change, overcoming maturity that this woman has lived, and that we also need to live daily. This woman was not afraid to talk about herself. Why? Because Jesus did not start with arrogant speech, asking her a favor, a glass of water. He immediately established with her a relationship of trust. He asked me to water. It means he is not arrogant. It means that he believes in the possibility that I offer you something good. He doesn't find me that negligible. He looks at me and can find a value on me. This is the experience that Samaritan makes Jesus when he realizes that he starts the right way. Asks her a favor, asks her a glass of water, and begins to offer her all the instruments needed to recruit the past and find a way in it. So many times, we also have here in the heart, in mind, the realities that oppress us, the difficulties, a mourning to be organized. So many times, we find people who have not been able to continue their lives because they have not buried their own dead. What do you mean, Father? The burial is such a day in such a cemetery. I'm not talking about this physical burial. I'm talking about that mourning that we need to organize daily inside us. Replacing things in place, washing our feelings of all hurts. Everything that and crazy. I remember when my sister died, it was so hurt. So disastrous to me when I thought I would never be able to smile in my life again. And for a long time, I was not able to smile. When we lose someone, we need to wash pain daily in a holy water, a sacred water, so that this memory stops us to oppress us, so that this longing stops us cry. Because with time, as we organize our mourning, that longing that was so much hurt becomes a good longing to be taken with us. That's interesting, isn't it? When the other dies, we cry for the other, for all that he will no longer have to live. But then comes a time when we cry for pure selfishness. It is because we have a pity of ourselves, our loneliness. We can't stand our loneliness, so we cry. Then one day I started to realize that I was being taken for a lightness. That something was getting different inside me. And that it was not the result of my effort only. Because of course, I have to collect human resources to organize mourning. Sometimes we need therapy to help us overcome a loss. But the therapist cannot do anything for us if we do not make the movement of mourning. And I feel like I started doing that. I started to strive in my daily life to occupy my head, to take a turn to my life, and not to stay there locked inside my room by crying my sister's death. It is the noon of life. It is the noon of pain, loss, when we begin to live a process of overcoming because we agreed to take the water from noon. This water that God offers us daily, this pure water that comes to us by faith, that comes to us by the word, that comes to us by friends, that comes to us by the music we listen to, the book we read. That word of God in us comforting us, boosting us to cross this difficult place. You who lost a person, who was suffering a lot in their last months, in their last year of life. We know that death is a relief for this suffering. And the saddest thing you have is to see a person we love to suffer. But even so, knowing that now she no longer suffers, that she has now rested from all that pain, that there is no longer that discomfort of the hospital, that physical suffering, when we rationalize, when you think that the other stops suffering, that now who suffers you, you have started to regiment this mourning, regimenting the instruments that will help you put this mourning in the right place. I gave the example of mourning, pain, loss, but it may also be betrayal. How many of us, embittered by the pain of betrayal, do we also need to organize mourning? We need to reinterpret the value of disappointment in us. Every time we get disillusioned with each other, it's really cruel. It's sad. It's hurt. But if you think more deeply, go down the steps of this disappointment a little. Don't just see the room she put on you. Because sometimes disappointment puts us in a room and we don't realize that there is one more below. And if you dare to discover the step that takes you to this below, this deeper room, you will see that disappointment is a very happy opportunity, that we have to have contact with reality. So okay, disillusioned that I am. That more and more, I convince myself. The great testimony we can give to those who do not believe is our balance. We are to show with our lives that we are men and women of reflection, that we are men and women of common sense, and that religion has done well to our hearts. We are crazy about God, but here we are maintaining a balance of sanity. That our experience of God is helping us to live at this time, pointing to eternity, but making the story better every day. Just as the federal deputy today gave a lesson of citizenship, today or yesterday, I do not know, a young deputy from Brasilia, that I do not remember his name, he resigning various rights to save the public coffers. This is how, when I, in my attitude and my posture, I can make the world better. The God who moves my heart, the God who generates my faith, that he gives me all the time as a gift, he leads me to have attitudes, gestures that can show the other that I believe. We all have crises of faith, and it is impossible for you to want to resume the faith of the time you were a child. The faith that was in the time of childhood was worth that time. I never regret the faith I had in the past, and that I no longer have today. The faith of us is advancing. She evolves. And often, because it does not know how to understand the evolution of our faith, we think we are no longer believing. First thing, we need to make a distinction. Faith is not feeling. Definitely, our feeling cannot determine what we call faith. Why? Because my experience of God will not always make me feel something. Just as I can get a text, read that text, and it touch absolutely nothing in my sensitivity. The text continues to have its value, isn't it? It may be that at that moment I was not so sensitive to perceive that text, to realize the beauties that are present in it. Life is like this. Our experience of faith is first. We have to understand that it is a gift we receive. I don't have faith because I want to. It is a gift that I receive from God. That's why it's the first gift we need to ask every day when we get up. Lord, give me the grace to continue believing. And then we need to understand that our faith in God has other developments. For example, when I believe in God, I am invited to also believe in humanity. Have you ever stopped to think that there are often people who believe in God and don't believe in humanity? And that there are people who believe in humanity, but do not believe in God? It is natural for this dichotomy to happen. Above all, for example, after the Enlightenment, which was that time in history, when the sciences wanted to explain all the occultisms that were present in the Middle Ages, the exaggerations of religion, or even that excess, suspensions that was part of the context of age medium, was highly criticized by the time of the lights. The Enlightenment, which came as a cultural revolution that tried to undo and belittle the whole process of human thought. But then today we are at a time when the criticism of the Enlightenment has already served us to correct our exaggerations of that time, to find a balance today in our way of believing in God, balancing this faith in God with faith in humanity. I remember that the great leap of faith I gave in my life was the moment I understood that my faith in God was directly linked to my faith to the human being, and that I could not believe in God describing the human being, and that the same process would also be invalid. I cannot believe only in humanity and describe in God. It is in this balance that I need to contextualize my faith. Often, my son, what we consider lack of faith is an imbalance between one reality and another. And now I tell you too that listens to me. How is the balance between your faith in God and faith in humanity? Because the spiritual well-being we need to live. What do I call well-being? A balanced faith that is good for the human heart. It needs to move the faith I have in God to the historical reality where I am situated. I say this, I need to balance, because many imbalances we find in humanity today are directly linked to the process of faith in God. Look, my people, I'm not afraid to say that. As a man of religion that deals with the religious process all the time, I find many people in which religion has done much more harm than well. Unbalanced people. People who lost the common sense frame. And you should know people like that too. That because of faith in God they ended up despising human life. They ended up reneoking, right? Relegating the whole historical human process, disregarding, right? Many people have at times to find the place of sacrifice in life. But we need to understand that sacrificing is to be sacred. So I sacrifice my life, but it doesn't mean that I keep suffering all the time. No, I make it saint everything that is mine. I put on the altar to sacrifice, to make sacred, to make holy. This is the balance. The faith that I am not living now. One of the rules of good living is to be constantly prepared for what life will ask for. And I know it's very easy in life for us to take on a stance that we will always be loaded by others. I think you live with people like that. I think you've been through the experience of having to deal with that person who never does your part and always expects us to do for her. It started like this at school, when we had that working group where 2 or 3 were dedicated a lot and the rest only put the name. Many times we are enslaved like this, sometimes even to be dear. In many moments this happened, and we can recognize. In many moments we carry our sudden because we wanted to have a little of their friendship. So doing the work for them was a way of us, an illusion, a nonsense. But how many times in our lives do we need to live with those who didn't want to have the preparation work? Somehow, and I know that, religiously, we are often educated to understand that we need to do for others all the time. Yes, I think life is always a donation experience. But there comes a time when you find that you can't donate what will not allow you to reach the best of yourself. Things that I can't share. It's mine. I prepared for that. Things you don't know, can't, should never share, because it is the result of what you worked for. I know that sometimes the culture of preparation, it is for the few. I was startled by numbers of those that compete, for example. Are you going to make a college entrance exam? How many times have I heard that? There are 15,000 candidates for each vacancy. Is not true. 90% of people are not preparing. 90% of people are limited to an absurd mediocrity exercise, a displacement with only 10% of the oil to reach the other side. But when it comes to taking the test, it's no use you want to give your preparation for that. This is what Jesus spoke at that time, because at first it can give the impression that Jesus is teaching us to say it, something that is contrary to what he taught us, that he told us there is no greater proof than giving life to his friend himself. But even in the donation, there is a limit, because it is like you want to give a medicine to a patient who has decided to die. There are searches that will put you in a state of great loneliness, which you cannot include the other. It's that old story. Marriage can only work when the 2 parts fight for it. It is no use for the woman to take her whole life to her husband's oil reserve. It's no use. This walk is personal, in love between 2 people inside a house. Building a family. The first thing that is asked is that equity. Look, we are different. There will be times when you will be strengthened in me, but never Levetto take your reservation, okay? Do not impose on me the responsibility of bringing the reserve, that it is up to you. This is what Jesus is talking about. Each of us needs to live your preparation, because in this eternity you will not be accompanied. It is a funnel that is narrowing, 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 and at the end of it will only pass you. I know that sometimes we have a terrible craze to scream for help before we helped us. How many times? Especially in my case, as a priest, religious leader I am, because of this cultural construction, that we are often also responsible for this. That we priests have an answer to everything. That we have solution to all problems. We don't have it. I'm not even realizing my problems. How many times have I almost wrecked before my problems? I don't have this posture ready. I never had. I don't want to have. I am someone who lives. I am human. I believe in God. But sometimes my faith in God does not hold me. It is not enough. Sometimes my human resources are scarce. Why? Because I'm projecting myself badly. I'm not taking oil. I'm not taking the reserve. I'm giving myself more than I can give myself. I'm offering myself far beyond my measurement. Join us on Path of Faith, where we delve deep into the heart of spirituality, offering insights and inspiration to illuminate your path towards a deeper connection with God. She stays very easily. She goes up quickly. We need to get to the court daily, where we are the defendant and we are the judge. I need to put myself daily. The day ends, I need to put myself in court. And there I am a defendant and I'm a judge, because it is the opportunity I have to unravel the lies I told. To unravel the lies I told others. Those scams of my personality. If I do not take care. So I daily take me to this court, where only honesty is allowed. And here comes the big question. We all need to enter this context of light, illuminate our way of being to find out where we are excessive, where we are cruel, where we kill the other with our word, with our opinion, with our nature, where the other is more than us too, that we need to allow it. Sometimes I see that at least my experience is so good when I find someone who is much better than me in a place, that I know I'm fragile, that I know I don't have that skill, and I find I Texac gear, not in the usefulness of that person, but in full recognition, her meaning there, from difference and how much I am better with this coexistence, with the different from the other, with what he challenges me. It's so intriguing because there are people you will know and you live up to. You get angry, irritates, and it pisses to the other's way, because it is the way you would like to be and can't. Your way of being can already what's bad. It's true. The other, for the simple fact that he is by my side, he already questioned me, without saying anything. He, living by my side, being my neighbor, he interrogates me. But we have to lower our weapons. It is inner effort. We can't forgive. Sometimes we carry diseases, sick expressions of ruined stones. We get ugly as we are carrying the grudges. We get bitter, a stiff face that we keep for so many, and that is that story. If I hurt the other, I hurt myself first. And the grudge is being impregnated in our house. Impressive how matter absorbs this. The house of us, the place we live, the place we work, we will deposit it in our wardrobe, and we are really impregnating. Sometimes we enter a house and you don't know how to say why you don't feel right there. We feel. It looks like it has a burden in the air. It is the life that expresses itself in everything we choose. In the details, right? All of the details have what we call the reason for our loves. In the details of my house, in the details in myself, I express the state I am in and what I really love and in which order I love. What place am I going? It is my ability to do my part, to open the drawer and say that this drawer is an expression of my soul. There are excesses here. So, when I will make what I keep and insist on keeping, it is as if I were doing a spiritual exercise as well. Oh, Cesio, you said something that is very certain. We are very cruel. And this week, I'm specifying who I'm cruel. And I challenge you at home. Who do you exercise your cruelty to? As good as a person is, at some point in life, he discovers a Christ to make cruel. Today I even cried about this fact. When I began to identify that my cruelty is justified, I have all the arguments. As I care about logic, and I'm naturally logical, so I need to argue. Regiment all the reasons why I'm being cruel, and it has no cruelty. And then there is no room for you to regret, for you to recognize yourself. There is no room for regret. It gets heavy, it gets very heavy. And suddenly, the other ends up being a mirror of what you denies most in yourself. When you begin to realize that the other does you evil when you are being cruel to him, because he reflects failure, a fact that I find it shameful to me. Because it's not good to be cruel. I think it's so liberating when Wayu can tell us, I don't deserve anything. It may seem cruel. But when you detach you to deserve something, Sometimes what makes me difficult in the relationship with you is that I think I deserve your attention, that you do it for me, that you do that. So if I can stop thinking I deserve it, my relationship with you is much more free, and suddenly you will surprise me with what I don't think I deserve. But it happened. The logic of merit is very cruel in relationships. We go to the relationship with the other by putting a very large burden upon him. I need you. I deserve you to treat me like this. That you do that. You have to do that. You have to. Oh my God. And of course, there are many things that we deserve. The question is a human dignity. We will not give up our human dignity. I deserve to be respected all the time. I am talking about the superfluous, which sometimes we are putting in the context of our relationships. This makes reconciliation very difficult with each other. It makes it difficult because forgiveness is that too. It is me to admit that you have no obligation to meet my expectations. And I have to admit, learn, assimilate, and install me in this place. Because sometimes it is said that he forgave and ruminate the story all his life, whole life, and it is not forgiveness. I think we don't is able to forgive the other if we do not fully recognize ourselves able to commit many evil in life. If I do not recognize that I have evil, that I am able to make mistakes a lot, I will not be able to grant this to each other and trust. 2 weeks ago, I could have a wonderful dialogue with my ex-husband. Let me correct myself, that I cannot say that it is my ex-husband, that my marriage was once null, declared. So, my old friend, your friend, right? My friend. That's right. He is a person who did very well too. It was beautiful. A man who played a role in his very important life. Yes, and it was very humble from his part, because he told me that he needed to live a half culp. He needed to tell me the things he was realizing only now. Like friends. How long did you stay together, Issa? We stayed 3.5 years, married 2.5 years. And did the Unial Declaration come out now? He left in December last year. Very unique. Very unique. Cristovan Basso living a lot with him now because we are producing a job that we will release early next year. Then a genius, Christopher. One of the greatest composers of our music. A great conductor. So we were talking about loneliness. He said like this. As I am in need of loneliness. And only now has it grown inside him. He said, but for a man who is married is difficult at home and you live this pain to defects. You have to know how to calibrate well, balance your time well. Have to have mutual understanding too. Because there are métiers that don't need so much solitude. But art needs. Imagine you make your mosaics with the kids running around the house. I need to. I admit that I miss. I like to travel alone sometimes. But as we are prodigal, I don't know what we're talking about. Of forgiveness. I was saying that I met Jada and it was very beautiful, his attitude of recognition and relief and being able to have room for asking for forgiveness. And I forgive, and I also ask. I think forgiveness is a violent attitude inside, brave. But it is a cleaning lady. It is a very cleaning attitude. We keep stones if you don't forgive, because it's you have to know the difference in expectation and hope. Yeah. 2 very different concepts. Yeah. Expectation you feel the other than he can't carry. And of hope you have to admit that he may not get what you want and ask yourself, I accept anyway. Interesting, Asa. You give up all that context you had, although it was not very conscious in you. That was the natural movement of your wedding, the choices you were making at that time, you exercised in what I think it is more sublime in a person's life, which is to be able to announce what you have achieved. Not of yourself, because it will never give up. But when you are able to look at the success you do, and you say it is not the most important to me, knowing how to get out of the scene, isn't it? To renounce yourself is not to forget who we are. It is renouncing the excesses of what we bring. It is looking at the suffering I have and being able to renounce the excesses it causes me. So I get the part that can teach me. The pedagogical dimension of a fact. The pedagogical dimension of a tragedy. And I'll be back to what I was saying. When you see in these serious religions that start from a love principle of God, respect for man, which I think is the most honest day that every religion needs to live. It is just when it teaches us, and I'm very happy to be a Christian. I am very comfortable from the word of Jesus, which teaches me the way of lightness. The way, as the Buddhists say, which is precisely the pursuit of this balance, which allows me to I never think that. But a loser. Right, because we dress good what is bad. Did you wonder if you would go vain to sleep today with what God has done in your life? I have to sleep naked in this truth. I have to unravel my soul daily and say what God has done to me and serve to this day. This is wonderful from our church, but especially from the invitation of Christ. The examination of conscience. This thing of every day to confess. Look to yourself. And the exercise there is the beginning of our philosophy. Now, Celine Dion has announced that she will stop singing for an indefinite time. My God, just as she did when she had her last child. How much time? Is she about 4 years without singing? 5 years. 5 years. I had the opportunity to listen to it in one of those return shows. When I heard that woman singing, all that production, I said, my God. She now canceled over 180 shows. There is no forecast back. Because of her husband, she stopped to take care of her husband. There is no forecast back. This ability to relativize the success it makes, this is very noble, my people. This is too hard. Getting out of the scene, then sometimes we see us attached to a misery that should be ashamed, right? A woman like this, I can use an inappropriate term. She evangelizes me. She evangelizes me with this attitude of her. Toby able to choose her family. Look, my family is more important than all that is great in the eyes of the other. A person who tars the backstage. And be happy. Be at peace. And know that it is still on the axis. And if you get out of the scene and be unhappy, it's not getting out of the scene, right? Your soul remains there, because then you would be unhappy and not match the choice. But getting out of the scene and being whole is really a mature soul, right? For me, the great secret of life is acceptance. To accept. What is it to accept? Lower the guard and stop fighting with life, right? I think the spirit of acceptance. I was hitting that word of the Bible a lot. He accepts everything that happens to you and in pain remains firm. Because in the crucible of humiliation, that man will learn to be truly honored. And I thought, could Jesus accept everything? But everything is... How so? A change? To accept is not to be passive in the face of life or things that depend on me, but having a spirit of constant acceptance makes you much more docile to what works and not. You get much more sensitive to the truth, life, sensitive to beauty. But it is a conscious option, well awake and demanding by humility. It is a small exercise. I say it's exercise because it's not very natural to be humble. No. You have to be very aware of yourself. The arrogance.